You think you're reacting to them, their tone, their arrogance, their carelessness, their ego. But what if, quietly beneath your awareness, you're actually reacting to yourself? Projection is the psychic trap you fall into without noticing. It's the moment when the unconscious steps forward, steals the shape of another person and says, "There, that's you," and you don't want to see it. Jung whispered a warning we still refuse to hear. The mirror always tells the truth. What's false is our willingness to look. And you know this intimately. The people you can't stand, the ones who awaken irritation the moment they enter the room, the ones who make your chest tighten or your jaw clench, they're not random. They're signals, they're shadows. They're the exiled parts of you wearing someone else's face so you can finally notice them. But here's the twist nobody wants to admit. Even the most aware, healed, or spiritually mature people project. In fact, the more conscious you believe you are, the more subtle your projections become. They hide behind spiritual language, moral superiority, or emotional narratives that feel completely justified. This is why projection isn't a flaw. It's a map. A map to the places inside you that are still unresolved, still longing for recognition, still waiting to be reclaimed. This video is your invitation to step toward that mirror instead of away from it. We'll walk deep into the anatomy of projection, the magnetism of the shadow, and then we'll decode the MIRROR method, a practical, psychological, soul-centered framework you can use every time you're triggered, irritated, overwhelmed, or certain that the problem is someone else. By the end, you won't just understand projection. You'll be able to use it deliberately, courageously, transformationally. So take a breath. You're about to meet a part of yourself you've unconsciously avoided for years, and it's been waiting. You've felt it before. That sudden rush of irritation around someone who hasn't actually done anything wrong. Or that powerful pull of admiration toward a stranger who seems to embody everything you wish you were. These moments feel personal, immediate, and justified. But they're not. They're psychological smoke signals, evidence that your unconscious is speaking through your perception. To understand projection, you have to start with a startling truth. You never see people as they are. You see them as you are. Your psyche is constantly filtering reality, deciding what you're allowed to notice about yourself and what you're not ready to face. The parts of you that feel unacceptable, your aggression, insecurity, envy, vulnerability, ambition, selfishness, desire, don't vanish. They simply get exiled into the shadow, and once they're there, you no longer see them in yourself. You see them in others. That co-worker you call arrogant, maybe they are, but your reaction reveals more about your internal landscape than their behavior. Your frustration points to a part of you that once wanted to take up space, to stand tall, to own your competence, but was punished for it. So now, instead of owning this potential, you see it as a threat. You fight it in them because you were taught to suppress it in you. The friend you label emotionally needy. Perhaps they're expressing needs you learned to bury, needs that once felt dangerous to show. So now, whenever someone around you reveals vulnerability, your body contracts, not because of them, but because of the old wound their expression touches inside you. This is the cruel beauty of projection. The traits you attack in others are often the traits you've never been allowed to express yourself. But projection isn't only about negatives. You also project the qualities you admire, adore, or romanticize. When you meet someone who feels magnetic, who seems to embody confidence or emotional depth or power, you might believe they contain something you lack. But that awe you feel, that light, it's yours. It's simply been transferred outward because you've forgotten it existed within you. This is why Jung insisted that projection is not a failure of perception, it's an invitation to integration. The psyche externalizes what you refuse to internalize. Every irritation is a clue, every judgment is a message, every admiration is a reminder. You project until you're ready to reclaim. And every time you say, "They're the problem," your unconscious whispers back, "Look again." Even highly conscious, spiritually aware people fall into projection. In fact, they project even more subtly. They do it through the language of righteousness. I'm not angry, I'm just setting boundaries. I'm not judging, I'm discerning energy. I'm not triggered, I'm simply protecting my peace. You've heard these lines, you've used them, but under the polished language lies the same mechanism, an unacknowledged inner conflict taking form outside of you. This is why projection is not solved by moral effort or spiritual discipline. You can meditate for hours and still project. You can read Jung and still project. You can be emotionally intelligent and still project. Because projection isn't a conscious decision, it's an unconscious reflex. Your job isn't to stop projecting. Your job is to start noticing, to pause when your chest tightens, to observe when your judgments feel absolute, to question when someone feels strangely important, either positively or negatively, because behind every projection is a piece of you that's asking to come home. And if you listen closely, you'll realize the enemy you see in others is often the forgotten ally inside yourself. There's a strange gravity inside you, a pull you don't consciously command. It draws you towards certain people and repels you from others. And you often explain this magnetism by saying things like, "We just didn't vibe," or "I don't know why, but they get under my skin." But you do know. Somewhere deep in your unconscious, you recognize yourself in them. Shadow magnetism is the silent choreography between your hidden traits and the traits you see unfolding in others. It's the moment when the unconscious says, "Pay attention." This is you, shown through another body. You feel it when someone talks too loudly and something in you tightens, because you've swallowed your own loudness for years. You feel it when someone cries too openly and you bristle, because you were taught to lock your tenderness behind your ribs. You feel it when someone succeeds too confidently and envy burns, because you abandoned your right to expand long ago. The shadow doesn't hide quietly. It pushes, it stings, it irritates. It exposes you through the people who trigger you the most. And here's the part that feels almost unfair. Your shadow doesn't ask whether the other person is right or wrong. It only asks whether they reflect something you've disowned. This means you can be triggered by someone who genuinely behaves poorly, or by someone who's simply expressing a part of you that never got permission to exist. Your nervous system reacts the same way, fast, emotional, unfiltered, because it's not responding to them. It's responding to history. Shadow magnetism is time travel disguised as irritation. It pulls old wounds into the present moment, the teacher who shamed your enthusiasm, the parent who punished your sensitivity, the friend who mocked your confidence. The culture that taught you which traits were acceptable and which were too much. You think you're annoyed at a person standing in front of you, but you're actually wrestling with ghosts. The shadow uses the world as its stage. Other people become actors, reenacting unresolved scenes from your past, so you can finally see the patterns you've been carrying. And this is why your reactions are disproportionate. You're not responding to a moment. You're responding to a memory. But here's where things get even more subtle. Sometimes your shadow hides behind spirituality. You call someone negative, but they're just expressing emotions you don't know how to allow. You call someone unhealed, but they're showing anger you were taught to suppress. You call someone egotistical, but they're simply embodying a level of self-honoring you've never permitted in yourself. This is what Jung meant when he warned of the spiritualized shadow, the tendency to use enlightenment as a mask for judgment. You create spiritual categories that feel justified, but underneath, the same mechanism is operating. You're seeing your disowned material appear in someone else's behavior. The irony is that the people who irritate you the most are often the ones who unconsciously carry your missing pieces. Your vitality, your assertiveness, your truth, your brokenness, your hunger. Your authenticity. Shadow magnetism isn't here to shame you. It's here to reunite you with what you lost. When someone triggers you, you're not being punished, you're being awakened. When someone unsettles you, you're not being threatened, you're being mirrored. When someone fascinates you, you're not being pulled into their orbit. You're being shown a part of your soul that's ready to surface. The shadow communicates through emotional charge. The more intense the reaction, the more significant the message. But you must look inward with honesty, not defensively, not spiritually bypassing, not pretending you're above the projection. Just honestly, because the qualities you reject in others are often the very qualities that could make you whole, and the qualities you idolize in others are often the ones you're ready to reclaim. You grow when you stop asking, "Why are they like this?" and start asking, "What part of me responds like this?" Your shadow isn't trying to expose you, it's trying to liberate you. It's not there to hurt you, it's there to return you to yourself. You can't stop projecting, no one can. Projection is woven into the architecture of consciousness, the psyche's way of revealing its hidden material without asking for permission. But you can transform projection from a blind reaction into a tool for awakening. And that's where the MIRROR method comes in. This framework isn't about controlling your shadow, it's about listening to it with precision, honesty, and courage. It guides you through the moment a projection appears, helping you decode the message beneath the reaction. Because every trigger, every irritation, every spark of admiration is a postcard from your unconscious. The MIRROR method simply teaches you how to read it. Let's walk through each step slowly, as if you were guiding yourself through a moment of emotional charge. M means map the reaction. The first step is deceptively simple. Notice that you're reacting. You won't always catch it in real time. Sometimes you recognize it hours later, when your mind is still looping a conversation or replaying an interaction. Mapping means acknowledging the moment. I am activated. Something in me is alive, tense, or unsettled. You observe your body, the tightness in your chest, the heat in your face, the rush of judgment, the sudden urge to withdraw or attack. Mapping doesn't require interpretation. It simply requires presence. You're drawing an emotional outline around the experience before making meaning out of it. And in doing so, you step out of automatic reaction and into conscious awareness. I identify the projection. Now you ask the key question: what exactly am I seeing in them that feels so charged in me? Is it arrogance, neediness, coldness, passivity, confidence, chaos, attention-seeking, control? Be specific. Precision breaks the spell, because what you identify in another person is rarely neutral. It's something that carries emotional electricity, something you either reject or desire, and your identification of that trait opens the door to the deeper work. This is the moment you admit, I'm not just reacting to them, I'm reacting to what they represent. R. Reclaim the disowned part. Now comes the uncomfortable truth. Whatever you've identified in them lives in you too. You don't reclaim the behavior, you reclaim the capacity. If they're arrogant, where have you suppressed your own authority? If they're needy, where have you silenced your own needs? If they're withdrawn, where have you denied yourself rest or emotional distance? Reclaiming is not imitation, it's recognition. It's acknowledging that the trait exists inside you in a form that is immature, unintegrated, or exiled. You're not blaming yourself, you're liberating yourself. R. Reflect on the origin. Every projection has a story. It didn't start with the person in front of you. It started years ago, with a parent, a teacher, a partner, a culture that punished certain traits and rewarded others, you reflect by asking, who taught me that this trait was dangerous? When did I first learn to hide this part of me? What was the cost of expressing it in my childhood? What did I have to suppress to belong? This reflection turns the projection from an emotional storm into a psychological insight. You're no longer a victim of the moment. You're a witness to your own history resurfacing. Oh, own your projection. This is the step most people avoid. The moment you say, "This is mine." Owning doesn't deny the other person's behavior. It simply acknowledges that your reaction is rooted in your inner landscape. You own your irritation, your envy, your defensiveness, your attraction, your intolerance, your idealization. You stop pretending that your judgment is objective truth. You claim it as subjective experience, something shaped by your past, your wounds, and your forgotten potential. Owning your projection is an act of psychological maturity. It reduces the grip of ego, softens the edges of certainty, and brings you back into alignment with yourself. Release. With integration, releasing doesn't mean forgetting. It means integrating the insight so that the projection loses its emotional charge. You release by updating the internal story. This trait isn't dangerous. This emotion isn't forbidden. This reaction isn't a threat. This part of me deserves reintegration. You breathe, you soften, you welcome home the piece of you that's been living in someone else's shadow. Release is not passive. It's a return to wholeness, a return to agency, a return to the self you were always meant to become. And the next time you feel triggered, you'll see it not as a failure, but as an opportunity, another mirror inviting you deeper into the truth of who you are. Because projection isn't a curse, it's a conversation, a dialogue between the conscious self and the unconscious self, using the world as the canvas. And now you know how to listen. You've reached the end, but this isn't really the end. It's the beginning of a different way of seeing, one that turns the world from an emotional battlefield into a psychological compass. Because now you understand something most people never realize. Your reactions are revelations. They aren't random and they aren't meaningless. They're messages from the parts of you that have lived too long in the dark. When you stop running from the mirror, you discover that the world isn't against you. It's reflecting you. Every disruption, every attraction, every irritation is a doorway into the places your conscious mind has forgotten. And instead of interpreting life as a series of people doing things to you, you begin to see life as a series of people showing things about you. The shadow stops being the enemy. It becomes the guide. You stop asking, why are they like this? And start asking, what is this trying to show me about myself? Most people never get here. They spend their lives convinced that their judgments are objective truths, that their triggers are justified, that their emotional storms begin and end outside of them. They fight ghosts in other people's bodies, never realizing the battlefield is internal. But you're no longer trapped in that loop. You've seen the mechanism, you've named it, you've walked through it, you've explored the anatomy of projection, the magnetism of the shadow, and the internal logic of your reactions. And now you carry a framework, the MIRROR method, that can turn every emotionally charged moment into a step toward integration. This is what real self-awareness looks like. Not perfection, not detachment, not spiritual cleanliness, but honesty. Honesty about the parts of you that ache for recognition. Honesty about the parts that have been muted, shamed, or exiled. Honesty about the traits you've been terrified to own, even when they've been hiding in plain sight. You didn't come here to eliminate your shadow. You came here to understand it, befriend it, and bring it back into the circle of who you are. because the traits you reject in others are often the ones that would make you whole if you learned how to hold them. And the traits you idolize in others are often the ones you've been too afraid to embody fully. Integration is messy. Integration is inconvenient. Integration is uncomfortable. But integration is freedom. And when you begin to integrate, something remarkable happens. The world softens. People feel less threatening. Conflicts feel less personal. Your emotional reactions feel less explosive. You no longer need to control everyone around you to feel safe within yourself. You no longer need to idealize or demonize. You see people as they are, not as containers for your unresolved material. That is the gift of projection. When you learn to use it consciously, it becomes a roadmap back to your essence. So the next time someone irritates you, pause. Don't defend, don't deflect, don't collapse into the old narrative that says, they're the problem. Instead, breathe and ask, what if this is my shadow asking to be seen? The next time someone fascinates you, pause. Feel the pull, feel the admiration, feel the longing, and ask, what if this beauty I see in them is mine waiting to be reclaimed? Let the world reflect you. Let the mirror become your teacher. Because when you stop fearing your shadow, you stop fearing life. When you stop projecting, you start seeing. When you stop running, you start returning. Returning to the parts of you still waiting to be welcomed. Returning to the emotions that never had a voice, returning to the potential you abandoned long ago. This is the path Jung pointed toward, not transcendence, but wholeness, not enlightenment, but integration, not perfection, but presence. The mirror has never been your enemy. It has always been your guide, and now you're finally ready to look.